Good morning, friends. Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal and Adab. This is my 241st video, and this is a very important video. There will be a series of videos on excision, and I would be wanting all my residents, whether in civil area or in bungalow area, they should understand what is excision and what is delimitation. There is a difference. You go to Wikipedia, you go to Google, you get your various answers there, but that's not interested. So I want this video, if you people can understand, then you will be in a position to make your local MLA and MP understand what is the delimitation. And this is very important. Once I am educated, it becomes very easy for me to educate somebody on a vice versa. So you have to get your MLA and MP on a platform. I was quite impressed with some of my colleagues sharing information from Sagar Cantonment, Meerut and Sikandrabad, Belgaum for that reason. I'm not much about Pune, but I did get some reports from Pune either. You know, we have to understand what is to be told to our local MLA and MP. We don't have to educate them in totality, but we have to at least make them understand the basic. Government is saying excision of cantonments. And under what rule? Cantonment Act 1924 or 26 rule section 3, 4 and 5. But what does this chapter 2 of the act say? We need to understand. It says definition and delimitation of cantonments. What are cantonments? Are these cantonments where civil laws are applicable, or are these cantonments which are under military stations? Something like in my cantonment vicinity, Bhatinda, Chandi Mandir, are these those cantonments? So please understand. Now what does section 3 say in 1924? The definition of cantonment: the central government may by notification in an official gazette declare any place or places in which any part of Indian Army or the Indian Air Force is quartered, or which, being in the vicinity of any such place or places, is or are required for the services of the forces, to be a cantonment for the purpose of this act and all other enactments from time to time being in force, and may by like notification declare that any cantonment shall cease to be a cantonment. This is very important. This was said in 1924. This definition in 2006 Act was little varied, where it was written Indian Army or Indian Air Force. It was written any forces which are quartered, and may by a like notification declare that any cantonment shall cease to be a cantonment. So 1924, this was the pre-1947 era when we were slaves. And in 2006, this act again speaks of this very rule, section 3. Why? After 1924, has any cantonment annexed any vicinity area? No. Or is it in 2006, post independence 1947, has any cantonment annexed any area? No. So why this rule? 1924, this rule may be required because the Britishers were wanting to create more cantonments. But why this rule? And why this part of it? This is very important. Please understand. So section 3 very clearly says, what do we understand by this rule made in 1924 for the first time and then in 2006? We need to go back to the acts of 1864 when the first Cantonment Act came up. and then subsequently 1870, 1888, 1889 and 1910 was defined as it was stated herewith? No. So what is the department, or what is the, inflow coming from 1864? Then what was the status of your and my cantonment after the making of the first Cantonment Act 1864? This is very important. This needs to be understood and explained to your local MLA and MP, who will do the needful in matter of concern, as you need to first understand what actually meant by. Now these words are very important. In 1864 they were used. They were used in other Cantonment Acts till 1900. Presidency town, or the local authority, or cantonment authority. Now these were the three specific words being used at various intervals in 1864 to 2006. Once this issue is clear, in my mind, it will become easier for you to explain to your local MLA and MP. Whoever from each cantonment wants to understand the same definition, I am ready to do a Zoom lecture with my residents, but please, that will be a paid Zoom lecture and recordings will be shared. So what do we go now? Now what does Rule 3 sub 2 says? The central government may by like notification define the limits of the cantonment. So 1924, the limits of a cantonment had to be defined. The same thing is influxed in 2006 Act. The central government may by like notification define. Has any of these cantonments after 1924 been created? Or any cantonment has been notified? After 1924, there has been one notification as per section 43A or CLA Rule 2, that is the civil area. 1924, the House Accommodation Act came, so that notification came up. So just imagine, all these dates are conniving. If you can cobweb these, you proved yourself that you were always a non-presidency town, or you fell under the local self-government or the local authority or the cantonment authority. So after 1864, and let's presume till 1910, cantonment limits were made. Absolutely right. The first cantonment limits were notified for Nazirabad in 1861, and the last cantonment limits which were altered were of Pune cantonment in 1913. In between, there had been mostly major cantonments had 2-2 notification. Ambala had a notification of 1877, and then it had a notification of 1887. And similarly, there is a full chapter on notification. So what is to be understood? So once the re-notification of a boundary pillar or a limit of the cantonment has been done, the British India cantonment got their cantonment boundary pillars. And in 1861 onwards, and these pillars were distinctive from military boundary pillars. So please understand how cantonment boundary pillars and military boundary pillars are distinctive. 1861, we were given cantonment boundary pillars. These were not military boundary pillars. For Nazirabad or for any cantonment, maybe Sagar, maybe Pune, maybe Sikandrabad, has to be. So this distinction between the two pillars is defined as presidency town. So the limits of 1864 Act were within the presidency town. But we can only explain or brief the MLA or the local MP if we are thoroughly educated by ourselves. Now let's read Rule 3. This is also a very important rule. could be called a section 3 subpara 3 of 1924 Act, equivalently when amended in 2006. Now what does this rule say? When any place is declared a cantonment for the first time, the central government may, until a board is constituted in accordance with the provisions of this act, by order make any provision which appears necessary to it, either for the administration of the cantonment or for the constitution of the board. So 1924, it says when any cantonment is declared under the notification, when 1861, do we call that Nazirabad a cantonment now? Well, because the Cantonment Act came in 1864 and Nazirabad got its boundary pillars in 1861. So when you have to understand, now what was the differentiation done? It says that within a period, constitute a board. In 2006, they amend that provision. They says within a period of 1 year in accordance with the provisions of the act, a board has to be constituted. In writing, extend the said period of 1 year for further period for 6 months at a time. Now what is happening? Please, all board members try and understand, for the last 2-3 years, there is no board election, and under this provision, section 3 sub 3, the government is extending that notification for 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. So government actually has usurped our rights. The present government in 2006, this is post 1947. So central government is not in a position of willing to give us anything. Educate yourself. So why does this say that cantonment boundary pillars in neither cantonments in British India prior to 1924 made were already notified, as stated in Nazirabad and Pune 1913, which is the last notification, were reclassified, meaning hereby in 1924 nothing was placed or declared a cantonment. We or any cantonment, we means Ambala, was never declared for the first time a cantonment in 1924. So what is this 1924 Cantonment Act trying to say? It is not retrospectively being implemented, so it is prospectively being implemented. After 1924, there has been no cantonment which has been created or crafted. To further explain, we were a cantonment or we were a military station in 1924. Now what the government is trying to misbehave or plead into its own doings. Are they trying to say that till 1924, all 57 cantonments were military stations? Is it the same what it is trying? And after 1924, CLA rules 1925 and 37, Rule 2, under Section 43A, civil areas were created. So that area was cantonment boundary pillars and the rest was military. Is that what the government trying to put? It cannot. This is where we need to educate. Now let's pick up an example for Ambala. I'll prove it to you. Now Ambala was formed as per a Governor General order of 1935 on 1st September under the Jepson Code 1 of page 233. This is way back in 1843. So what was my cantonment Ambala at that time when the status in 1835 was said, we will station or troop Ambala as a military station. So, okay, fine, from 1935 or maybe 1843, we were a military station. What was the boundaries of that military station? But the minute 1864 Cantonment Act came, our bifurcation stood in that act itself. I will read some sections. So we need to understand The minute Cantonment Act was made, 1864, the two regulations, military station and cantonment, were separated. Now, how they were? So, these pillars had to be made and cantonment boundary pillars be called to, as per section 3 sub 3, are declared within the cantonment boundary pillars. Or what is the Act 1924 or 2006 stating? That the same act is not applicable on military boundary pillars. So, what do I understand now? Tell me honestly, is Cantonment Act either 1864 or 1924 or 2006, is it applicable on military boundary pillars? This is where the army and the department are usurping our land records. They do not show us the military boundary pillars. So now I need to ask and I have to explain my MLA, look sir, I was always under the cantonment boundary pillars from the date of my existence. When my cantonment was made, everybody knows when their cantonment was made. Or you can watch my video when every cantonment was first notified by the Governor General orders. So now let's read section 3 subpara 4. The central government may by notification in an official gazette direct that in any place declared a cantonment under subsection 1 of 3 itself, the provisions of an enactment relating to local self-government other than the act shall have effect only to such an extent or subject to such a modification, or that any authority constituted under any such enactment shall exercise authority only to such extent as may be specified in the notification. Nothing changed in 2006. The whole section remains replicate except the provisions of any enactment relating to the local self-government other than this act shall have effect only to such extent or subject to modification. So again, what was said in 1924 is being said in 2006. So that means I would put that these rules 3, 4 and 5 are very important to be understood. And then only can we move forward. So what is section 3 sub 4 saying? Now it is bringing a word called local self-government. Means the various acts from 1864 to 1910 and then 1924 and finally 2006. What does it read? Local self-government. And what is local self-government? Is the cantonment authority or the cantonment board or the CO or the constitution of the cantonment. Now let's understand this word, local self-government. I know there is somebody called from Jalandhar, Dr. Arora. He's been working very hard on local self-government. He shared a brief with me also, and I would like him to make a video in touch with me. Now, what does Rule 6 of the Cantonment Act 1864 read? The word British India denotes territories which are or may become vested in Her Majesty by the Statute 21 and 22 of the Victoria Chapter 106, entitled under an Act for the better government of India, except in Singapore, Prince of Wales Island. And the local government denotes the person or person authorized by law to administrate executive government in any part of British India. So the Britishers, in a very connivingly manner, being the masters of English, they define British India, that entire British India falls under Her Majesty. So the minute we say we are a classified land, we are falling under Rule 3 of the CLA rules 1925, that all lands vest in Her Majesty. Now 1864 he is saying the same thing, but below down he is explaining what local government meant. He says that local government meant that a government is constituted by persons authorized by the British government or the Governor General, and he will govern the rest part of the cantonment, which is a part of British India. So we need to really understand these things. Now, if we read Rule 6 of 1864, local government may, within limits of any military cantonment, establish court of small causes of the nature described in section 3 of Act 42 of 1860 for the establishments of court small causes beyond the local limits of the jurisdiction of the Supreme Courts of jurisdiction established by Royal Charter. So by itself in the Cantonment Act it says if it has to be, this is military station, this is called British India, and this is the local government area. But if the jurisdiction has to be extended of the small causes court in the military station, it is done under this rule. Why it is to be done? When this part is also British India, this part is also British India. So the whole of the terrain is under the British government. Why is it separating and it's saying because this is the local government area, this is the local self-government area, any jurisdiction on this area will be subjected to on this area under this rule. So again we need to, any military cantonment may be declared by a local government. Now understand, military cantonment be declared a local government to be a sub-district for the purpose of 1864 to provide registration assurance, the cantonment magistrate may be declared a deputy registrar, powers given under rule which one again needs to 35 of 1864. Friends, because the Britishers were making rules and laws for the country for the first time, until 1861 Indian Council Act, they had all the powers to subjective rules to be made by the Governor General. So nobody was required. He was the King of India, Governor General order. The Governor General was in supremacy. He could make any order under the Governor General. Further, this order used to go to England and get a stamp from the Queen of England, which was very viable that it would be done. So rules and laws were being made like today what the present government or the government of India does. It notifies a rule. So that rule's promulgation is valid for 6 months till it does not go to the parliament and finally becomes a rule or an act. Understand? Now what does Rule 45 says? If any military cantonment in any part of India not subject to the British government shall be declared by the Governor General of India in council to be a sub-district for the purpose of registration under the Act 35 of 1864, the Governor General of India in council shall declare what authorities shall be deemed to be district registrar, and the registrar general respectively with reference to such military cantonments and deputy registrar thereof. So this is more clearer than the sun or water. that even in 1864 the British recognized that there was a civil area in cantonments which was then called the bungalow area or the bazaar area. They were both same. Bungalow or bazaar meant one and this was never a part of British India or the military cantonment. Area which belonged to the Queen of England or the Her Majesties under these statutes, what I just mentioned, 21 and 22, are actually called military boundary pillars. Now, if you have understood, I've just offered, we can have a Zoom session, that will be a paid session. So, all local MLAs and MPs have to be educated likewise. But you can only do this when this is in your brain. That what was the cantonment boundary pillars of the local self-government area and what was the military boundary pillars area or the military cantonments. Now, even from 1864 to 1910, Cantonment Act Section 4 now reads, for every cantonment beyond the limits of Presidency Town, there shall be a cantonment authority and a cantonment magistrate. Now, local government or local authority is finally converting into Presidency Town. So, beyond the limits of the Presidency Town. So, what is the Presidency Town? Please understand, it is the military station prior to 1864, which were. Nazirabad is an individual example of 1861. So now the Presidency Town, beyond its limit, we had a cantonment authority. This is what Rule 4, Section 4 of 1910 says. Now again we will read the expression cantonment authority as used in this act means a cantonment committee or where a cantonment committee has not been constituted or has in pursuance of an order of a local government ceased to exist or for any reason cannot be convened, then subject to any rules made under section 24 of subclause 5, the commanding officer would be the supreme of the cantonment authority. Fine. Read section 24 of 1910 Act. It very clearly says, wherever there is not a cantonment authority created, convened or made, till that making it is the station commander or the commanding in officer would govern it. We all need to understand simply what is Presidency Town. Now, what is the expression Presidency Town is defined by Section 3, Subpara 41 of the General Clauses Act 1897, Rule 10 of 1897 to mean the local limits for time being of an ordinary original civil jurisdiction of the High Court of jurisdiction of Fort Williams, Madras, Bombay, as case may be. So, Presidency Town, again what was defined in 1864, how small causes court was to be jurisdictionated by the courts, because courts and civil acts were applicable in the minus military station or military cantonments. So, to influx the jurisdiction of the civil small causes court or the court, this Presidency Town was defined likewise. Now, it clearly stating it is only made for jurisdiction of the court as stated in Cantonment Act 1864, which I would rebrush quickly. It was defined in Rule 1, the word local government denotes the person or persons authorized by law to administer executive government in any part of British India. So, we in any given cantonment or military station were never part of the Presidency Town, and we were always governed by the local government or the local self-government. Now let us read Rule 5 of the Cantonment Act 1910. The expression Cantonment Authority as used in this act means a cantonment committee or where a cantonment committee has not been constituted or has in pursuance of an order of a local government ceased to exist or for any reason cannot be convened, the subject to any rule under section 24 subpara 5. Now if we read section 5(3) of the same act, the cantonment authority shall deemed to be a local authority as defined in the Cattle Trespass Act 1871, the Local Authorities Loan Act 1879, the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 and the Journal Clauses Act 1897. 1910, the British government is defining cantonment authority likewise. So let us read now what are these acts actually speaking on. Cattle Trespass Act, Act 1 of 1871, Section 3, local authority means body or persons from time being invested by law with the control and administration of any matter within a specified local area. Let us read Act 9 of 1879, Section 3, local authority means any body, corporate, municipal committee, 1879. So there is a municipal committee or other persons legally entitled to the control and management of any local and municipal funds or legally entitled to impose any cess, duty, taxes upon persons in the local area. Friends, please understand these small words used in this: cess, local tax, municipal funds. 1879, 1871. Let us read the Act now 13 of 1885. The local authority under section 3 subpara 7 means any municipal committee, district board, body of port commissioners or other legal entitled or entrusted by the government with the control and management of any municipal or local funds. I'm surprised if people don't want to educate themselves. Act 10 of 1897, section 3 subpara 28, local authority shall mean a municipal committee, district board, body of port or commission or any other body entitled for municipal management of the local funds. So everywhere it is being defined since 1910, 1864, we have to just club it. So there is a problem. What we people educate on, somebody watches my video, gets a little fancier and buoyed about it, like we have in Jhansi. The consultant who has risen up to create an aura that he can do everything. You have to club these cases and join them, then go to the court. Because these pleadings are very important. So we must understand what is local self-government. Now what is Dr. Arora explaining local self-government? He is explaining local self-government post 1947 by the making of the 1950 Constitution. Rightly done. We can club what was said in 1864 or 1871 and we can club what is being said in 1950 after the Constitution. But we can't just play on 1950 Constitution and say this is local self-government. So our Panchayati Raj, our rights. No. We have to club this and then we get this. Because it flows and the government says our rights flow from the predecessors. So we need to understand this local self-government, local authority, how the Britishers defined in 1864, 1920 and then further in 1924 and 1926. Friends, my Ambala cantonment, if Cantonment Act 1864 was made applicable, I have sale deeds where cantonment magistrate in 1864 is stamping sale deeds of bungalows in cantonments. How? Because we were old grants. We need to understand this much. Dig in your land record. That is why I keep shouting to people. Your land record is very important, because the minute you get that stamping that this sale deed prior to 1924 is stamped by a cantonment magistrate, because he had the sub-registrar power from 1864 to 1924. All sale deeds within your local government or local self area or cantonment authority were being stamped by the cantonment magistrate. So that is the local area and the local self-government area. If we understand this, if we can really brainwash ourselves into all this, what I am speaking, please watch this video again and again. Any question, make your notes, make your briefs. So once your briefs are made, now you need to understand section 4(1) of the Cantonment Act 1924 and subsequently 2006. This says making of the limits of cantonment. Now what are the limits made in 1924 and what is the need of making limits? So Britishers very smartly are trying to converge us from 1864 to 1910 and then finally 1924. Why did our government make 2006 Cantonment Act? It could have simply said we don't need one because there is nothing new happening in these cantonments. But just to make a fancy and fool of people, we are having a new CLA rules, we are having a new Cantonment Act, post-independence, but our land is yet being kept under Article 246, Central Pool. Why? No limits are being defined, nothing is being done. Section 4(1), alteration of limits of cantonment. This is very important because the entire excision word being used by the Ministry of Defence to fool us. It should be delimitation, not excision. The central government may, after consulting the state government and board concerned. Now these are two people, but I can imagine, friends, I am being very sarky. When the present government can nullify 370 on a whims of political gains by not endorsing to the law of bringing the local government of J&K, imagine what will happen with us. The central government may, after consulting the state government. Now what is the state government? Let's say my cantonment Ambala, Haryana becomes the state government. Now Haryana government has to accept whether it is ready to take the central pool government of India land in list 1 to state government. Now will Ambala become a land, will be a state subject now, or will it remain a central subject? That is to be understood. And who is the board? The board is my local representative of my cantonment whom I have elected. Let's say Ambala is a class A board, it has 8 people or 9 if I am not wrong. But since last 2 years, 3 years, this government has not created any board members. Why? Because it has given us a lollipop and a fancier. I would call it a jumla, that we will excise you. How will they excise us? No board member is sitting, nobody is consulting. People like me, you and somewhere in Sagar who are educated, or let's say Meerut MLA or anybody, where a little powerful cantonment, they are trying to play a little bit of gimmick. But where is the actual nominated board members elected through the Government Representation of India's Act? Nobody. So what does it say? By notification in the official gazette. Now it's very important. Declare its intention to include within the cantonment any local area situated in the cantonment vicinity thereof. So 1924 said we will, let's say Ambala cantonment, we need some added land, so we will take that land by an official notification, and that will be governed by the Cantonment Act, which is written in 1864 to 2006 Act. What is the second part of it? Or to exclude from the cantonment any local area comprised therein. It is not talking of, it's saying local area. So what was local area defined as? Local authority, local government, local self-government, cantonment authority. These are all local. These are all cantonment boundary pillars where the Cantonment Act, a civil act, is applicable. Ask yourself, ask any cantonment in your military station in your vicinity of your, is the Cantonment Act 2006 or CLA rules applicable there? No. Why were they applicable on us? Because we were the local area. Guys, please wake up. I can't do more than this. You know, I want you to be educated so that you can educate your MLA. So what is written in 1924? You must know that was written by the Governor General Order Commander-in-Chief, dated 13th April 1806. Now what is written in 1924 was written 150 years prior in 1806 or 30 years. What was written? Where new cantonments are forming for the purpose of describing the limits, marking out the extent of streets and lines as well as the space of ground for the bungalows of officers of the respective land. So 1806 there was very clear orders that these boundary pillars or these demarcations had to be taken. Where are those demarcations? No DC will bring forward those because they become vernacular record. You know, it suits the government of today. We people, like what Jhansi bungalow owner just did in a consultant in the case of Jalandhar, you rush to become a plaintiff. The minute you become the plaintiff, the government wins the case. I'm being honest to say. Because government doesn't need to plead anything. The entire onus goes on the plaintiff to prove what he is saying. It's very difficult to shift the onus under Evidence Act. Very difficult. Because lower courts don't allow us production of documents. Lower courts don't allow us for admission of documents. Lower courts don't allow us for interrogatories. So there is nothing on oath which comes. Issues, most of our advocates and legal luminaries don't get issues made because pleadings are not right. So please understand this. So Ambala cantonments, boundary pillars were first created in 1835 and those boundary pillars must have been military boundary pillars. Where are they? Ask this question for Sagar, for Sikandrabad, for Aurangabad, for Pune. But you have to be educated, you have to be united for all this. Now section 1924, section 4.2, any inhabitant or cantonment or local area in respect of which a notification has been published under subsection 1 within 6 weeks from the date of notification, subjecting to in writing through an official commander-in-chief, objections have to be filed. Fine. The same was amended in 2006. Everything remains same from 6 weeks. They made it to 8 weeks. So here we say we file objections. 1924, which cantonment influxed vicinity areas? None. Check out to your boundary pillars. Get your GLR plans from the Cantonment Authority. 1902 survey maps are lying in the Survey of India office, Dehradun. Ask your local MLA and MP to first get them because those are pink marked plans and they can only come to the local municipality through an official transaction. No individual. I saw those maps but I was not allowed to take them because they were marked pink. Pink documents are not for public. So what is the purpose of 1924 and 2006 Act when this section was given? Military stations were already there. So notification under section 4, no cantonment was made after 1924. So it's quite a travesty of making these sections and puzzling us because we never read these sections and these sections become immaterial for us. Now coming to section 4.3. What does this section say? Now this section very clearly reads, on expiry of 6 weeks from the date of notification under the above section, may after consideration of the objections, if any, which may be submitted under subsection 2, notified officially include the local area in respect of which notification. So what is being included? Local area. So what was included in 1864? Local area. The military cantonment of the British India cantonment was existing in 1864. But what came in? Local area. And that local authority, local government was what? Is my and your bungalow area, or now called the bazaars or the civil area. As case may be, it may be excluded also. We may take, we may not, and we may leave back any such area, any part thereof from the cantonment. So, the rule says you exclude, the rule says you add. So, for this purpose, section 4, subpara 3 VR or my cantonment Ambala was under the Cantonment Act 1864, already notified as a local government or a local authority or a cantonment authority. Later in 1910 and 1924, Ambala was subjected to local self-government, and this is likewise all cantonments were. But you need to dig in your notifications and your orders. Now, which has been explained how Governor General or military boundary pillars or the Presidency Town, where the military stations were made by the British Army ever since the first cantonment of Danapur, or which may be called Barakpur, was made. If this part of the making is understood by your local MLA and MP, then you have some chances to prove that civil area which is notified in sub-rule 2 subpara 3 under section 43 of the Cantonment Act 1924 and CLA rules originally rule 2 1937. What is the rule 2 interpretation of clause? This CLA rules will extend to British India. Now they say this CLA rules will extend to British India. Why? Because imagine rule 1 1864 is talking of British India, CLA rule 3 is talking of British India. So the word British India, again I am saying under the statute, all lands which vest with Her Majesty under the statutes 21 and 22. So please friends understand. Now what does section 43 of 1924 Act says? Every board constituted under section 13 class 1, 2, 4 shall appoint a committee consisting of elected members of board, health officers and executive engineers for the administration of such area cantonment. Central government may notification declare to be a civil area and may delegate its powers and duties to such committees under the manner read in subsection 1 subpara E of 44. So it is only to constitute a board, and board is already existing. But why bring it in section 43A? Why not? This was influxed in 1910 or 1989 Cantonment Act. Please, the vice president is the chairman of the board, that is immaterial. Similarly, now CLA rules 2020. Please friends and MLAs and MPs understand this definition. In these rules, unless the context otherwise requires, acts means any cantonment act. Building site means a portion of land held or intend to be held for a building. Now again, building sites mean you are with the land and the building erected thereupon. Defense establishment means schedule annexed with these rules. Survey numbers mean a portion of land of which the areas separately entered in the land records of the cantonment, including the digitalized versions, words and expressions. So again, we have to understand these rules which were being made under CLA rules for definition section 2. Here it does not talk of General Clauses Act. It does not talk of the civil area which was made in rule 3 of it. But it talks. So it is quite similar to the original CLA rules of 1937, except it does not specify civil area under section 47 of the Cantonment Act. Now 2006, because the act there was 43. Now let's read section 46 and 47 of the Cantonment Act 2006. Now here civil area is being defined. Imagine What is being excised? Civil area as per the rule 2 sub rule 3 section 43A notified civil areas of CLA rule. But here into CLA rules 2020 and Cantonment Act 2006, this civil area is being defined. The central government by a notification in official gazette declare the civil area and cantonment which is inhabited largely by civil population to the civil area for the purpose of this act. Has any cantonment 2006 after being notified that the civil area is being extended? Yes, I have a property case in Rani Khet where the boundary pillars were shifted and a bungalow was taken from bungalow area to civil area and it is held by a general. So those notifications, and there is another one for Jhansi cantonment, there is another one for a different cantonment. So these are available. The central government may in consultation with the board undertake and when required shall undertake after every census a review of the boundaries of the civil area. Has any cantonment after 2006 done this? Bareilly report I got through. There was something which somebody shared with me. Now what does section 43 or section 47 here? Why same civil area? Every board constituted under section 12 of the cantonment shall appoint a committee consisted of elected members of board, the health officer and the executive engineer for the administration of civil areas in the cantonment board as notified in section 46. So when 46 has not been notified, what is section 47 going to do? There are no powers. Subsection 1 E subpara of section 48, again vice president or the chairman or the station commander. The powers duty to function of the boards under subsection 1 of section 137, 143, 147, 149 and 262 shall be discharged in respect to civil areas, civil area committee. What is happening? Nothing has been done in 2006 Act. 2020 CLA rules come in place. You get fascinated by section 29 of CLA rules. So friends, please wake up, yaar. I get tired at sometimes, In my local Ambala cantonment, there was a policy which came in 2021. An entire bazaar area where Excision, Railway Road, Rai Market, Bank Road, everybody, all leaders became beggars. And they started running to the local MLA. What did they get? Nothing. Here we can now educate the MLA and MP that what is civil area, sir? As per 2020 CLA rules, 1937 CLA rules, what are board members? Why are board members for the last 2-3 years not being created? Why elections are not being held in cantonments? And why the word excision is being used? It should be delimitation. So what is a presidency town? Where do we land up? We are the civil area, bazaar area or the bungalow area. We are the non-presidency town which is not a military cantonment recognized by the 1864 Act. Now the last section 5 which is the most important section. What is section 5 saying now of the Cantonment Act 1924 and 2006? The effect of including an area when by a notification under section 4, any local area is included in the cantonment. Such area shall thereupon be subjected to this act and all other enactments for the time being enforced throughout the cantonment, and to all notifications, rules, regulations, bylaws, orders and directions issued made thereafter. So there we culminate that 1864 Act when was imposed. There were areas and we were being included in the military area or the British India, and this is how the Cantonment Acts, all rules and regulations were made applicable on us. Because the British wanted their 3 major concerns towards the cantonment is sanitation, hygiene and building safety. So for that they said even if you are a civil municipality but brought in within the Ambala Cantonment, because Ambala was a civil municipality in 1869 as per the gazetteer. So friends, please understand, this rule becomes very important, stating that when we were subject to Governor General orders of 1809, we were always called non-presidency towns, a local government area, which later was called Cantonment Authority or Cantonment or local self-government. Names have changed, but the status is that we are old grants. We were revenue free grants which were never converted or were under the Governor General orders of military as claimed. Friends, it is very simple. Just watch this video, make your notes. And if people want, I can take Zoom classes. Let us all educate what is civil area and what is excision and what is delimitation. The minute you explain your MLA or MP, you are only asking, sir, as per the cantonment structure itself from 1864, we were never within the British India or the military cantonments. We were always influxed into the cantonment and rules were made applicable on us of the military or the regulations just to be governed for these three things. Now, when excision has to be taken as per these rules, which I just mentioned, Rule 5 or Rule 4, which is most important, when the area has to be excluded. So, please, sir, ask for complete delimitation, and so that the regulations or the Governor General orders or the sword which hangs on us is removed. We were never a military grant under any GGO because we were never military boundary pillars. We were cantonment boundary pillars. So friends, you can always come back to me. Thank you. Good day.